Are you taking calcium for your bones and you're not seeing change in your tests and you doubt if they're even doing anything? Or maybe you're lifting weights, you're lifting heavy, you're doing the impact work, but you're not sure how much protein you need to eat or if you're even getting enough nutrients and should supplement. And if that sounds like you, then this episode is for you. This is episode 3 of our 5-part bone health series. I covered in episode 1 screening, interpretation, and context. And I really stressed why strong bones is not just about numbers on a scan. And sometimes we're really freaked out unnecessarily. Building strong bones is about longevity, independence, preventing fractures, avoiding chronic pain, preserving our range of motion, and ultimately protecting our quality of life. You know, me as a gerontologist, I'm always looking at our future self. I want to protect my 80-year-old self. So I got to do things now. I got to do things today. And I also talked about bone being a living, metabolically active tissue. They're not static. They don't just like build and that's it. When we lose our estrogen in this menopause transition, the bone breakdown happens pretty quickly. And most of what we lose happens in those first 5 to 10 years after your birth date, after menopause, that 12 consecutive months without your period. That's your birth date. So it really happens quickly. And we also covered the real fracture risk, the fracture risk factors. I guess that's the way we say that. But there's things that you can't change, like your genetics or your body frame. If you're small, it's easier to lose bone. We go into more detail of that in episode 1, so you can go back and listen to that one. In episode 2, we talked about movement as a signal to your skeleton. Bones, they don't respond to fear. Okay, they don't respond to good intentions. They need load. They need a little stressor. And walking is great for your overall health. It's great for your heart. It's great for your metabolic flexibility, great for your blood sugar, but it's usually not enough to stimulate enough bone growth after menopause. Resistance training, progressive overload, appropriately progressed impact are what create the real mechanical stimulus that bones need to adapt and to get stronger, especially at the key sites that people always talk about. It's like the hips, the spine, and the wrists. Okay. If you break your pinky bone, it's not life changing. So we also covered about how to train smartly and safely. So if you have osteopenia, which is the stage before osteoporosis, which seems like almost everybody in my community has at some point, you can usually lift and include impact with gradual progression, which I talked about in the episode, and use good technique. So don't be afraid. It's just sort of a little warning signal that maybe you need to work on your bone health. But if you have osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, maybe joint pain, other issues, then strength and impact are actually still important. You need that, but you may need some slower progression. Maybe you need to emphasize your posture and balance and avoid some spinal twists and things like that. So go back and have a listen to that episode. I'll have these in the show notes. Take your notes and always talk to your doctor if you have any joint pain or osteoarthritis, osteoporosis particularly, so that you can adjust the plan. So far we've talked about understanding your bones, interpreting the data, and then stimulating your bones. And today we're going to talk about feeding your bones, because you can't build bones without the raw materials, like building a house without the bricks. So this whole 5-part series covers the screening and diagnosis, which we did in episode 1, the movement we talked about in the last episode. Today's episode is nutrition. Next time will be HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And the last one will be sleep and stress. And each episode focuses just on one pillar, because I could go on for hours with what to do for bones. So in each episode, I also give you a little action plan and things that you can do. And I put this information together for you based on what I learned as a gerontologist in my studies, my interviews with bone experts like Dr. Doug Lucas and Dr. John Newstead, as well as many other functional medicine doctors on the podcast. I do my own research. I read my own books. I look at the websites. I have newsletters. I go listen to podcasts. I go to online rabbit holes. So this is where this information is coming from, if you want to know. Anything I say in this podcast may or may not be relevant to you. I don't know. I don't know where you are. I don't know your personal health history. The science also continues to evolve. So I continue to learn and I may change my mind on certain things too. That's why you stay updated. So take what I say or what any of my guests say with a grain of salt. Anything you hear or read online, social media, listen to other podcasts, be a little skeptical, do your own research, and then speak to your doctor before you're implementing anything you hear. And this episode really is for informational purposes only. And I don't know your personal health history. So bring your questions to your own health practitioner. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast and turn on the notification button so you don't miss the remaining episodes. Or go back and listen to the early ones too if you need that foundation. And in the show notes, I also have a free mini bone guide. It's something that's super practical. It's really short. It's not going to overwhelm you. And it's a place that you can start today. And if you want to dive even deeper, then join us in the Biohacking Menopause membership group. So women's only menopause support group where we implement a lot of these things that we talk about together. We have 14-day bone challenges where for 14 days, we try to implement some of these things, make them habits. And we also have our guest experts, the ones I interview, come in and you can ask your own questions. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes too. So now let's talk about how to feed your bones so they actually get what they need to build. So the first one we're going to talk about is the most important. If I had to start with one nutrient that midlife women undereat the most for bone health, it's going to be protein. I knew you were like, I knew she was going to say that, right? She always talks about that for muscle. Well, it's important for bone too. Bones are not just calcium. We always associate calcium. Oh, and you take my calcium supplement and then I'm good to go. No, it doesn't work like that. Sadly, I wish it did. But bone protein is 50% by volume, and it's mostly collagen. So that collagen framework is what minerals need to attach to, because you heard about minerals, how important they're for bones. They got to attach to something. There's a scaffolding. So if you don't have protein, you don't have that scaffolding. And if you don't have the scaffolding, then you got a weak structure here. So when we eat protein, what that does, it stimulates this thing called IGF-1, this insulin-like growth factor. And that supports the bone formation. We kind of need that. And we also want to preserve our muscle mass. So when we talk about protein, usually we're talking about muscle very often, including me. But when we build muscle, that actually pulls on the bone when we do movements. And that's what strengthens it. It strengthens the bones. It gives a little signal to the bones like, hey, I better start building more here. And then also protein, if we have enough muscle, enough strength, if we fall, it's not so bad. Won't break our bones, right? Well, hopefully less likely. And many women I see in our community who are either in perimenopause or just postmenopause, they're eating way too little protein, especially if they're dieting. And I have to say, I seem to attract these women who are doing like 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. And I used to do the 2 meal a day thing. I was like, I thought it was good for me. I thought it was healthy. And evidently, it's not so great for our hormones when we're going through this transition. So if you are on that 2 meal a day or 1 meal a day track, then you're probably not getting enough protein. And so the general recommendation, if you were to like Google this and say, how much protein do I need? Generally, you'll find it's between 1 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, or that's like half a gram to 0.7 grams per pound. In my opinion, it's not enough. It's quite low, especially if you're active. And Dr. Doug Lucas, and I'm going to be referring to him and Dr. John Newstead as well. They're both bone experts and they got great YouTube channels and podcasts. We've had interviews with them. I highly recommend you go and listen because just great teachers there as well that can break down science and explain it to you. So Dr. Doug Lucas also, I was happy to find out he also recommends 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. This is what I usually say. I'd like to keep it simple. I'm like 1.6, 0.5, like whatever. One, the number 1 I can deal with, the number 2 I can deal with, and that's good. So if you have 1 gram per pound of body weight, if you're 150 pounds or 120 pounds, it's 120 grams, okay, of protein that you need to eat per day in general. Again, very general. This is, if you're talking about kilos, it's 2.2, or you can say just 2 is easy to remember. And this is for Dr. Doug recommends this for his osteoporosis patients, and he also recommends this for optimal bone health. Now, the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is 0.8 grams per kilogram. That's a bare minimal survival level. It's not optimization. It's not for women post-menopause or in perimenopause, especially if you're training. And you may need more, you may need less. Okay, this is for you to figure out. Bones, again, they are 50% by volume protein. There's this collagen matrix there. It's a higher intake of protein, increases our IGF-1, the insulin-like growth factor, to drive the bone formation, to help build the bones. And it also helps with calcium phosphate absorption, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, and muscle strength. So it's very common that women who are in osteoporosis are lean. You can also have osteoporosis and be not lean, but generally the leaner patients, they start there with those protein recommendations. Now, if you're obese, Dr. Doug likes to adjust to the requirements of protein to an ideal body weight. Okay. And I often say the same thing for women who just want to lose weight. What if you're 200 pounds and you want to be 150, then we tend to eat 150 grams of protein. And when I say 150 grams of protein, I'm not meaning like put a chicken on a scale and weigh 150 and you go, okay, that's my 150 grams of protein. It's not that. There's about 20 to 30 grams of protein in 100 grams of chicken, more or less. Okay, depends how big your chicken breasts are. They tend to be a lot bigger in the US than they are in Europe. But generally speaking, you got to understand how to convert. Okay, you can go to ChatGPT or Google and then say, I've got X amount of ounces, grams, whatever it is that you use. How much protein is that? So always keep that in mind. I've had women make this mistake before. The other thing that is important is that animal protein tends to give better bone mineral density than plant-only diets. So I love plants. If you ever follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you see my plate is mostly plants. Usually it's 80% plants, and then I've got my protein there. I'm very efficient with the protein. I know how important it is. And I spread them out, usually 30 grams of protein per meal, more or less. And if I need some snacks, I put some protein snacks in there. And if that's really hard for you, we're going to talk about how to get more in your diet or how to help that a little bit later. So my message to you is really that you cannot undereat and expect your skeleton to thrive, or your hormones, or your hair, or things. So what do we eat? And I want to give you some examples. So we need the best sources for leucine. All right, leucine is one of those essential amino acids. We want essential amino acids. These are amino acids that our body cannot make by themselves. And we want them to deliver bone nutrients like calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D to the bones. So we're going to prioritize the animal sources. They outperform the plant-only diets for bone mineral density. Bone mineral density we talked about in the first episode. I won't go into it, but we're going to equate it to strong bones, even though it doesn't always equate to strong bones. There are ways to check this. Go to episode 1. We need plants for all the nutrients and the minerals and all these things. Not that animals don't have them, but we want polyphenols. We want so many other things. So let's think about, where can we get our protein? Well, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, skyr, they would have about 20 to 25 grams of protein per cup. And that's also got calcium, probiotics, also really good for you. It's a great breakfast bowl. And add berries to it. And I'm going to tell you why in the next few minutes. And make sure you don't buy these types of yogurts with added sugars or sugar added, or these fruit at the bottom things. Like, add your own fruit. Okay. Canned sardines. Yes, that's my favorite. I am traveling today. And whenever I travel in the plane, I always have a can of sardines with me. My husband, yeah, is not always a fan and always worried about the people around us, but I need my sardines. So canned sardines and canned salmon with the bones are really great for protein and the calcium as well, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later today too. So if you have that, it's about 20 to 25 grams, little can, right? This can's not that big. You can mash it up, put it on a cracker, or put it on what I do. I just put it on a big bowl of salad. Eggs as well, pastured eggs. There's 6 grams of protein per egg. Okay, it's not that much. That's when we make 3 egg omelets or something like that. And even then, it's not enough if we're trying to reach 30 grams. But there's leucine and lysine that are for collagen there. You can boil it, you can poach it, you can scramble it with spinach. I heard, I can't even remember why, but there is something with poaching that is superior. Go look it up. But pastured egg yolks have more leucine and lysine than the whites. Okay, so make sure you eat the yolks. They build collagen and the muscle that our skeleton pretty much needs. I am one of these people because I have the wonky genes. I can't eat too much saturated fat. So once in a while, I have some egg yolks, but I do like, and what I do take is this thing called yolked, Yolked. It's a fermented egg yolk powder. It tastes so good. It's like one of these things that I just use it like a dessert, but it's the fermentation of these egg yolks that create smaller, more absorbable peptides, which shut down osteoclasts, those cells that are eating up the bones, and then they activate osteoblasts, the bone building cells. And I found out about it because Dr. Elizabeth Yorth, she's a longevity doctor in Boulder, Colorado, with the Boulder Longevity Institute, and she recommends this for her older patients. And I kind of test it out and I love it. Next thing is chicken breasts, chicken thighs, about 25 to 30 grams per 4 ounces. Evidently, the white meat cuts bone loss best. I'm like, just get whatever you can. You can grill it with herbs. Grass fed, grass finished, if you have that option. Ground beef, 25 grams. It also is got some zinc in there. You can stir fry that or make these little keftas. I make these tiny little, they're like mini burgers, I guess. Is that what you call them? So here's a sample day. If you are looking for 1 gram of protein per pound, if you're a 130-pound woman, you need about 130 grams of protein. Okay. Breakfast would be Greek yogurt and collagen. Why not add a collagen powder? And you get 30 grams of protein there. Lunch, open a can of sardines, put it on a big ass salad. Follow me. You'll see what I do. It's almost literally every single day. Kind of boring, but very colorful. I like to put tons of colors in there. And that's 30 grams of protein. A snack, let's say 2 eggs, a bit of cheese. If you eat cheese, you can tolerate dairy, 20 grams. And dinner will be chicken and quinoa. Now, these are just the protein component. We're not talking about, yes, you should add all these other vegetables, but if we're looking for protein, 50 grams of protein will be right there for dinner. And then you add on whatever else, because vegetables also have protein, and beans certainly do. Tofu certainly does. We didn't even talk about that, but all the other vegetables, they got a tiny bit of protein, but we want to focus on the big levers here. And animal proteins, they kind of win in a lot of areas, but you don't have to eat all animals. If you don't, it's just that it's a little bit more efficient. You can do all this stuff as a vegetarian or even a vegan. You may need some supplementation too. But I myself, even though I eat all of these things, I still use essential amino acids to fill in the gaps and just I use it like as an insurance to make sure I get everything I need in, because my body certainly cannot make its own essential amino acids. Essential amino acids, they come in a powder or a pill, or you can get these things online. I personally like Kion very much. And it's just because it tastes so good, makes me drink more water on top of it. But if you have a low appetite, if you're like on a GLP-1, injecting yourself and going, oh my God, it's hard for me to eat, you're probably not eating enough, you may need some essential amino acids. If you are plant-based, essential amino acids are also really good. If you train hard, essential amino acids are good. So we don't have any large randomized controlled trials, as I understand. I did a great interview with Angelo Keeley, and he's like, I should go back to that. Listen to it. It was so good. That's what started me on this essential amino acid chain. And I did I'll see if I can remember to put that episode in the show notes. But Maybe he did pull out some trials, but the large ones, evidently, I can't find. But in postmenopausal women who have higher dietary essential amino acids, they're getting these amino acids from their diet, okay, especially the leucine and the lysine from their vegetables. They are linked to higher bone mineral density at the spine and the forearm. Okay, forearm, it's not as devastating if you break it, but the spine, yeah. And they had 13 to 19% lower osteoporosis risk, independent of genetics. So this was a twin study. That's why I love twin studies, because you can rule out genes. And lysine specifically helps with the collagen and the calcium absorption. We need that for bone. And leucine kickstarts mTOR for protein synthesis. If you know what mTOR, we're not going to get into that, but that's sort of a trigger for building muscle. And there's some small trials out there with postmenopausal women and resistance training showing that essential amino acid blends, I don't know which ones they used, but let's just say they used any average one. They helped improve muscle strength and function and bone mineral density markers. And there's one that highlights essential amino acids for preventing osteoporosis via muscle support. So whatever we're doing for our muscles, it's likely doing really good for our bones. Okay, that was one all about protein. Geez, I'm spending way too much time. I'm going to try to go through this a bit faster. Number two is calcium. Okay, calcium, we've heard about it. It's very important to have, but it's not enough if it's taken just alone. Okay, just on its own. Literally, I went to get a DEXA scan and I was told that for the very first time you got osteopenia, and the doctor, this is a general Spanish doctor, told me, general Spanish doctor, no, he was an orthopedic surgeon. Okay. He looked at my scan and said, just take some vitamin C and walk. That's all you need to do now. And I was like, are you friggin' kidding me? All right. I knew better by then, but I was really sad because this is what he's telling all of his patients. And then we get really surprised when we get from osteopenia into osteoporosis. But anyways, I digress. So think of calcium as the bricks, but bricks without the structure and the direction and the regulation don't build a strong house. Okay, so the general guidelines for postmenopausal women are around 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day, total intake from food plus supplements. This is what you will find online. However, Dr. Doug Lucas, a bone health expert, he says the standard recommendation for calcium for postmenopausal women is outdated and maybe too high for many. I bet you thought I was going to say too low. It's where I was talking about too low protein. That also caught me by surprise when he said that. So he, like me, always likes to look at food first before supplements. And he's pointing to some studies that show the body needs between 700 and 1,000 milligrams per day absorbed. Okay. It's not what you take, it's what you absorb that's important. Right. Some countries, like in the UK, say 700 milligrams. The WHO says 500 milligrams. So it may be lower than we think. So when we think about food, we're thinking about dairy or green vegetables, canned fish with bones, and pair that with vitamin D and K2. All right. So I'll go through some of the foods that we have. So Dr. Doug also, he says, don't ever exceed the safe upper limits, 2,400 milligrams. Thought I should mention that. I'm just kind of looking at my notes as we're hurrying along here so I don't forget anything. So what I always say is test, don't guess, to find out what are you absorbing. Foods first possible is most important. And we want to pair our calcium-rich foods with vitamin D and vitamin K2 rich foods, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. So what can we do? We're going to mix 3 to 4 of these things daily for about 800 to 1,000 milligrams without supplements. Okay. And then if you need supplement, you add the supplement. So breakfast, hello again, Greek yogurt, 200 grams will be about 300 to 400 milligrams of calcium. You can add chia seeds. Say a tablespoon of chia seeds will give you 80 milligrams of calcium. And then if you add some fortified almond milk or something like that, you're going to have a total of about 450 milligrams. And if you add Vitamin C rich foods like berries to that Greek yogurt, you're going to get 20 to 30% more absorption from calcium. Now I say that you're going to get 20% more absorption. I don't know if you're going to get 20%. Like, what if you have a gut that needs help and you're not absorbing it? I don't know, but I say these things and I hate when I say them, but that's why we test, measure, and assess. But the studies show that in the research that the patients who are the people who were in this study, what do they call them? The individuals, they had 20 to 30% more absorption of calcium. Now, do you have the same microbiome as them? Do you have the same lifestyle of them? Are you seeing this? I don't know. So take these things with a grain of salt. We don't know, but it's likely. The snack that you're going to have for more calcium is canned sardines again. Hello, 100 grams of sardines with the bones, or salmon as well with the bones, 350 milligrams of calcium. Put it on a cracker, put it in a salad, whatever it is that you want. Then for lunch, a kale salad. I'm sorry if you're a kale hater. You can find another leafy green that's high in calcium. But if you were to have 100 grams of that, one cup of kale. It's not that much. Kale is so like fluffy. That's why I massage it. Or I usually cook my kale. I don't eat it raw. And you cook it, 1 cup cooked is 180 milligrams. And if you have tofu, a half a cup of tofu, also not difficult to get down. That's 400 milligrams of calcium. And tahini dressing. That's something I make all the time. Super yummy, super easy. Mix it with a little lemon in there, and 1 tablespoon of that has got 100 milligrams. And if you had lemon in there, if you add lemon in the dressing, you're going to get more absorption from the calcium because there's vitamin C in lemon juice, right? Vitamin C helps with the calcium absorption. Then for dinner, cottage cheese with salmon. I know it sounds really weird, but I do have this incredible recipe that I got from my biohacking bestie, Natalie Nedham. If you ever want that, it's so good, where you mix cottage cheese with salmon, a little bit of egg, and oh my God, and really nice. So cottage cheese got 150 milligrams of calcium. Salmon with the bones has got 200 milligrams. Or get some broccoli, 1 cup of cooked broccoli, 60 milligrams. So what I was questioning when I was pulling this out and trying to figure out dinner ideas for you. And again, I'm not telling you just eat salmon and cottage cheese for dinner. I encourage you to get a lot of colorful vegetables as well. But I started to get curious. I was like, wait a second, salmon with the bones. That means like canned salmon, right? Which is fine. I buy myself wild caught canned salmon. I think it's great. I eat it with the bones. So I started to look up. I was like, well, what about fresh fillets, fresh salmon fillets, even if it's wild caught, let's say. To get 300 milligrams of calcium, you'd need 2 pounds or 900 grams of fish daily. It's pretty unrealistic versus 1 3-ounce small can serving of salmon with the bone. It's those bones that are really key for the calcium. You don't taste them and you're like, what? How am I going to eat the bones? Like, bones are hard. No, they get really soft when they're canned or in a glass jar. Okay. Because there are people who don't like the BP lining in the lining of the can, which is not ideal. So if you get it in a glass jar, even better. And so when I looked at wild caught, there's more omega-3s and D, but calcium is still not enough if you don't have the bones in there. So there you go. And then dessert, what was thrown out at me was dried figs. Eat 5 of them for 130 milligrams of calcium. Whoa, that's a lot of calcium, but it's a lot of sugar, right? 5 figs. I love figs. I'll eat dried figs, 1, maybe 2. But then I started to I was like, okay, if I'm going to eat or recommend dried figs, I'd rather recommend prunes because there's research showing that prunes help with bone mineral density. So I looked that up. I was like, is it the same amount? And the answer was no. 6 prunes which are about 50 grams, have about 25 milligrams of calcium versus 5 figs have 130 milligrams of calcium. That's a big difference. Sugar is probably about the same. But so again, women in menopause, I would skip the sugary figs and prunes. I mean, have one or two if you enjoy them. Just it's not going to be enough for your calcium. Go get a cheese board if you do dairy. 30 grams of cheddar cheese gives you 200 milligrams of calcium. So another thing to remember is eat eat the calcium rich foods with fats like olive oil and avocados, and you're going to get a little bit better absorption. So go for about 300 to 400 milligrams per meal. Now, supplements can fill the gaps, but more is not always better. So, too much supplemental calcium, especially if you don't have enough vitamin D and K2, can potentially increase the risk of vascular calcification in some people. So that means in your arteries and blood vessels, you don't want to have plaque buildup, right? We don't want this calcification. So always make sure that you're doing the things right. That's why I always say, go talk to your doctor, your nutritionist, or your health practitioner to figure all this stuff out. We don't want to have things backfire, which they can. You're like, oh, but Sora said, no, Renault said, go and do your own research. This is what you got it. We all are bio individual, right? So anyways, I want to go back to the calcium and the vitamin C. So we're thinking about oranges and citrus fruit, lemons, peppers. They boost the uptake of calcium by 20 to 30% in the studies. And they help with collagen synthesis, like the making of collagen for your bones as well. So keep that in mind to pair those foods. So eat calcium-rich foods like yogurt and sardines and the greens with the vitamin C, like the berries, broccoli, and the lemon dressing, which is why I mentioned that in those menus. And be careful of high-dose vitamin C supplements, meaning 1 to 2 grams per day, because it may increase your risk of having a kidney stone in oxalate-sensitive people. If you don't know what oxalate is, then you're probably not one of those people. Usually people who know who are oxalate sensitive, they know they are. But if you get the food level of, let's say, of vitamin C, which is usually between 75 and 200 milligrams, then it's very bone protective. So just be careful. I mean, I do high dose vitamin C when I'm doing this sort of radiation offset protocol, or if I'm traveling, or if I feel like, there may be a cold coming on, then I do that. But it's a temporary thing. Okay, now let's move on to number 3, vitamin D, magnesium, K2, and trace minerals. We're putting them all in one bucket here. It's the last one because these are the main components when you're looking at a bone supplement, for example, or you're just looking for foods that will help us build bone. So vitamin D, it helps the calcium absorption in the gut. And without enough of it, you can eat all the calcium you want and still not be absorbing it efficiently. Okay, we're looking for optimal here. So what foods are rich in vitamin D? Well, there are not that many foods that are naturally high in vitamin D. Fatty fish is pretty much at the top of the list. And then you've got fortified foods. That's why we go and get sun outdoors as much as we can. We try to absorb our vitamin D naturally. And if you cannot, that's when you got to bring in the supplements. But think about fatty fish. Wild salmon, 3 ounces of cooked salmon will have about 400 to 600 IUs. And usually when you take a supplement, it's somewhere between 500 and 1,000 IUs per drop or per capsule or something like that. So that's the equivalent. And if you're getting farmed or just regular Atlantic salmon, that's going to be lower, 200 to 500 IUs. And then sardines, 200 to 270, rainbow trout, mackerel, herring, egg yolks, mushrooms, liver. Yay, I love liver. I know a lot of people don't, but if you know how to cook it right and you put the right spices, it's amazing. Just get over it. Now, test, don't guess. That's my mantra when we're talking about vitamin D. So the optimal varies. Dr. Doug Lucas, it was really interesting when I interviewed Dr. Doug and Dr. John Newstead. They said they go for blood levels that support bone metabolism and not just the bare minimum, but they said between 30 and 60 nanograms per ml, ng per ml. That to me seemed pretty low because most of the functional medicine doctors I interview, they like it between 60 and 90. But they said they're moving away from that. They used to recommend that, or at least I know Dr. Doug did. I'm not sure about Dr. John, but Dr. Doug, he said now it's more about like the 30-50. John said between 40-60, but let's say between 30 and 60 is sufficient for optimal bone health and just optimal health. Interesting, huh? So go test. It's so easy to get a blood test, a vitamin D blood test. Just see where you're at. If you're at that, like no need to supplement. You got it. Magnesium is the next one. We're all pretty much deficient in magnesium. Go and test and you'll probably find out you are, but you may be surprised that you're not. So again, don't listen to me, but this is really important for bone structure and vitamin D metabolism. You need the magnesium for that. So low magnesium levels can impair the bone quality and reduce vitamin D activation. So most of us are low due to stress and gut issues or just not getting enough from your food. So what food can we get? Well, we want to get, generally speaking, 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium in our food per day. The top sources will be pumpkin seeds, like 2 or 3 tablespoons. Sounds like a lot, but I eat that much. I love pumpkin seeds. I put them on everything. That's one of my main go-to seeds. Chia seeds also 2 to 3 tablespoons. Black beans, 1 cup is about 120 milligrams. Remember, we're shooting for 300 to 400. So we got to get several of these things. Dark chocolate, yay. Happy that was on there. But when I found out you need 5 squares to get 95 milligrams, I was like, oh, well, to me, that seems like a lot. Depends how thick those squares are. I mean, I know it's so easy to eat, but realistically, I would be eating 2 squares because once you get to 85, 90, I even make bark with 100% chocolate or 99%. And it's so bitter. I can only do 1 or 2. I'm like, that just satisfies me. It's fine. When your chocolate is highly palatable, meaning under 70, then it's much easier to eat 5 squares or the whole bar. I mean, I have clients I worked with where they eat 1 full bar of chocolate a day because it's so tasty. But when you increase it to 85% or more, they can't eat the whole bar, right? But it's not highly palatable. So anyways, if you're taking 2 squares of length, then you've only got 25 to 35 milligrams. And that's just, again, one little, it's not, we need 300 to 400. So it's just going to be a little excuse to eat dark chocolate. That's what I'm saying. Quinoa has got 120 milligrams for a cup of cooked quinoa, which is easy to eat. Now, some sample meals. Let me give you a sample meal for the bones and magnesium synergy. Breakfast. A chia seed pudding, 110 milligrams right there with the Greek yogurt, pair it with the yogurt and the pumpkin seeds on top of that. Add berries, remember, for the absorption of calcium, and it's such a win. I usually eat stir-fry vegetables and eggs and salmon or something for breakfast, and now I'm thinking maybe I should go back to sweet instead of savory, but this looks really good. Lunch, quinoa salad and salmon and spinach. And then you get snack, should be a handful of almonds and cheese, and dinner, let's say black beans and chicken and avocado. And there you go. And you've got your requirements, even more of magnesium for the day. But you can see all these foods keep repeating over and over again. So maybe it's got magnesium and calcium. And when you put these things together, you've got everything wonderful for bone health. And we didn't even talk, and I don't have a space here to talk about the foods maybe we should not be eating. And because there's things maybe that are not promoting bone buildup and maybe are promoting bone breakdown, or there's medications, or there's other things that we should maybe, I'll talk about in another episode. But think not only the foods that we're eating, but what should we not be putting in our body? Alcohol, smoking, all these things are not good for your bones. I digress. Vitamin K2. K2, this is going to be really interesting about K2 because I learned a lot from Dr. John Newstead. So K2 helps direct the calcium into the bones and away from the soft tissues, and it activates osteocalcin, which binds calcium into the bone matrix. And this is why calcium without the K2 may not be ideal for you long term, right? So we need things with K2. Very often we take vitamin D3 with K2 for taking a supplement. Very often they go together. So Dr. John Newstead, he's a naturopathic doctor. He's focused on osteoporosis. He's got a great website. I'll have a link to him. He's in the mini bone guide as well. He strongly advocates for vitamin K2, especially in the MK4 form for bone health. So most supplements, if you go to your bottles that have K2 in it, your D3 or your bone supplement, whatever it is that you have, they use a form called MK7 from bacteria fermentation. But Dr. Newstead, he says that it's overhyped and problematic because MK7 has a longer half-life, which leads to inconsistent absorption, potential gut microbiome disruption, not good for your gut, and weaker bone data. So he's saying the studies aren't shown, they're weaker compared to the MK4 that he's finding. So he says that the MK7 studies that he's researching are often industry funded, and they got mixed results on the actual bone mineral density slash fracture outcomes. So when I did this episode with Dr. John and Dr. Doug, the take-home message I got from them was that we're worried about fracture risk more than anything, more than a score, a T-score. So what? Okay, it's just one piece of the puzzle. We just want to make sure you don't fall and fracture. Right? Like, that's what's important to them. So I agree with them 100%. It's like cholesterol. Like, okay, I have high cholesterol, but am I going to have a heart attack? That's what I care. That's why we take deeper dives into these things, not just a number. So it's the same thing for a scale. Like, go weigh yourself. Is it bone? Is it bone? Is it muscle? Is it fat? Where are the trends going? All these things. So I'm just making these little analogies so that you can understand where I'm coming from and why I think this is important. So he says the MK4 studies really shine in large Japanese trials. He says there's 25 studies out there, over 7,000 people. So those are large studies. And they showed a reduction in fracture by 50 to 80%, 50% to 80% at 45 milligrams of MK4 per day dosages. And he's pushing the higher dose MK4, which is between 5 and 45 milligrams per day. And ideally, he likes to split the doses between 15 and 45 milligrams. So if you're taking a supplement. So I then asked him, I was like, well, why aren't supplements companies using the MK form if there's such great studies about that? And he says, because it's expensive. There you go. Money's driving everything, right? And so then I was like, okay, where can we get it from food? Because I always like food first. And they come mostly from animal products, especially organ meats like liver, heart, kidneys, and full fat dairy from grass-fed sources and poultry. So he says the amounts vary by animal diet and region. So of course it's going to be higher in Japan. There'll be more MK4, I guess, in Japan, in Japanese cows than American cows. So to give you an idea, goose liver pate. How often do you eat that? Like, I never eat that, but I eat liver. But goose liver pate, if you ate 2 to 3 ounces, it's got 369 micrograms of MK4. And what we needed, how much? He said 45 milligrams, not micrograms. Like, how much do we have to eat? Egg yolks have 25 micrograms, one egg. So, okay, I was like, geez, we're going to have to supplement because I don't see how I could eat that much liver. I mean, honestly. So the MK4, go look it up. MK4 versus MK7. I think it's super interesting. And the last part of this little third part is the trace minerals: boron, zinc, copper, and manganese. These, they play smaller but meaningful roles in bone formation and collagen cross-linking. So it's never just one nutrient, it's a network. So I'm going to have a list. You can go to the Bone Guide, or I'll have some kind of a list in the show notes where I have all the numbers down here. I'm not going to repeat all of them. So for boron, we want 2 to 3 milligrams per day. And you can get prunes, 5 to 6 prunes for 2 milligrams. Well, again, do you want that much sugar? Half of an avocado, that's realistic, 1.5 milligrams. Zinc, you want 8 to 11 milligrams per day for collagen synthesis. Pumpkin seeds, yay, again, 2 tablespoons, that's all for 2 milligrams. But that's not enough. Maybe you need some grass-fed beef, 4 ounces to give you 5 milligrams to reach that 8 to 11 milligrams per day of zinc. Okay, then we need copper, 1 milligram, liver, beef or chicken, it's around 10 milligrams for 3 ounces. Dark chocolate, 2 squares will give you zero point 0.4 milligrams. Whenever I see 0.4, although we need 1 milligram, that's not that much. So, okay, we're halfway there. Get 4 squares. You got nearly got 1 milligram. And then manganese, we've got 2 to 5 milligrams per day. Pumpkin seeds is there at the top of the list again, 1.5 milligrams. So if you're not sprinkling pumpkin seeds everywhere, like, I don't know what's wrong. That's bone right there. I toast them. I know probably better raw than eating toasted, but I just tend to eat more when they're toasted. I love them. They taste so much better. Spinach, 1 cup of cooked spinach, 1.5 milligrams of manganese. So, okay, that's the end of those minerals. Now, the next section we're going to talk about is supplements, supplementation. When do they help? When do they don't? Supplements are really helpful when you are not eating enough food or eating enough of those nutrient dense foods. Maybe your labs show that you have some deficiencies or insufficiencies. There is increased demand, like in menopause, and supplements are not helpful if you're there to replace your nutrition, or if you take them blindly without testing, or you're expecting to compensate for not moving, or you're taking it with an unhealthy gut. So no supplement replaces resistance training. No supplement overrides chronic stress. And we're going to have the stress component after the last one. And no supplement fixes chronic undereating. And food is just so foundational. And that's part of the biohacking pyramid here. Supplements are there, the second part of the pyramid, to be supportive. Now, when we're talking about supplements, the one that's easy for me to talk about is Algae Cal. It's a brand name and it's got algae in it, of course, seaweed, right? It's plant-based. It's got calcium in it, and it comes from it's called marine red algae, and it's got, I don't know, something special about that. I got to ask them what's the deal with why that algae and not something else, but there's something about that algae that must be super special. And then they've got 13 of the essential bone building minerals in a bioavailable form, plus extra vitamins. So I like it because it's just focused on bones, right? It's not a multivitamin that's going to try to target everything. And I think this is really important. This is important for me because I've been told I have osteopenia, even though my REM scan, my REMS scan, this is a different scan that shows that I have very strong bones. I want to keep it that way. I don't care about a number so much if I have everything else in place. And again, you're going to have to listen to the whole episode 1 to know what I'm talking about. So in Algae Cal, you've got the core minerals from algae. You've got calcium, 720 milligrams. It's the main component. And you've got magnesium, which we just talked about. It's super important. You got the trace minerals, the boron, the copper, the manganese. And they've got other ones there. And then they have other vitamin boosters because they know, just like I just talked about, vitamin D3 is important. They've got 1,600. Is it 1,600? I don't remember exactly how many I use in it, but they have D3, they have the K2, and they have the vitamin C in there. And so this is really important because it's not just taking supplements like that, like this formula, because they all have a synergistic effect. Right? So this is why I like that one. And I'm not going to talk about it in this one. I'm going to have a link to the episode about strontium. Strontium is a separate formula that they sell, and there's some things that you need to know about it. And I'll go listen to that episode that I did with Dr. Doug Lucas. And then collagen peptides. Collagen peptides can be really helpful for bone. And you know that collagen, there's type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. There's many things depending if you want it for skin, for joints. But if you want it for bone, then go and look for one that has, I think it's a trademark, Fortibone, Fortibone. And you'll see different bone formulas have this trademark. And that's because there have been trials with Fortibone that show bone mineral density improvements, and it helps osteoblasts, helps build the bone. And it's different than those beauty collagens and things like that. Just make sure it's got Fortibone in it. And you have about 5 to 10 grams per day, I think is what was in the studies. That's another one. And then there's another one that Dr. Doug talked about, and I don't know much about it. We didn't take a deep dive into it, but if you go follow his YouTube, he talks about lactoferrin. He says there's emerging research coming out between 200 and 400 milligrams may be good, may be anti-inflammatory. It may help with the osteoblasts, the bone building ones. They're small trials. He's looking at them. It's just kind of a little added thing. Maybe it'll be big one day. I don't know. And now the last piece. This is the missing piece. And I'm not going to go into detail about it because it's a whole other episode. And I do have other episodes about this. And it's your gut health, because we need to absorb what we eat and what we're doing. You can eat like a perfect diet. You can follow the menus. You can take perfect supplements. But if your gut is not functioning well, then you can't absorb it, right? Or you're not absorbing it optimally. And so the things that impair absorption are low stomach acid, chronic stress. I mean, who doesn't have that? Inflammatory bowel conditions. So think about IBS, celiac disease, dysbiosis, and long-term use of certain medications. Now, I should probably do a deep dive into medications, but if you are on medication, find out what it is, read the bottle, go and talk to AI or ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever it is that you use, and just ask, is this helping me or hurting me in my bones? Probably not helping you, but maybe it is actually if it's a bone supplement. But if you are concerned about bone breakdown, there are medications that can break down the bone, and just go find out or ask your doctor if you can, if you can't do the research. So vitamin D, calcium, magnesium, protein, they all require proper digestion and absorption. I feel like doing a whole episode on older adults needing, who are over 65, need more protein, right? They need more protein because their gut isn't breaking these things down as well. Actually, there's a whole other reason. There are a lot of reasons why we need more protein as we age. And we don't, and we can not. And I think it's one of these blanket statements that I'm going to eat my own words one day, because not everybody needs to eat a lot more protein than a younger person just because you hit this magic number of 65. It depends. It depends on you. It depends on your gut. It depends on your muscle. It depends on your whole biology. So it's not necessarily eat more protein after the 65, but that's a whole other podcast. But let's get back to the gut. If it's inflamed, if it's sluggish, if it's compromised, your bones are probably not getting what you think you're giving them. And bone health really does start in the gut. I can feel my functional medicine doctors guests patting me on the back because for them, everything starts in the gut. And I think it's somewhat true that a lot of things start in the gut. We need to look at our gut health. If you got digestive symptoms, chronic bloating, too much gas, reflux, long-term restrictive dieting, like all this stuff is not being helpful for the gut, and it's not being helpful for the nutrients that you're trying to absorb. So absorption is everything. It's not what you take, it's what you absorb. And that's why we like to test these things too. So if you need help with your gut, I've got loads of gut podcasts. I'm going to do a little promo for my buddy Cynthia Thurlow, who just wrote a book called The Menopause Gut. So I don't know, by the time this one airs, it's either on pre-sale or it's already on sale, but such a good book on gut health. But go get a gut specialist to help you with your gut issues. It's so critical to so many things. So just to wrap up, I'm going to really thank you that you're here with me. You're still hanging on. I'm so sorry. This gone way too long, way longer than I thought it would be. But my message to you is that you can't outtrain bad nutrition. You can't supplement your way out of inactivity, and you can't build bone without absorbing what you consume. So bone health, it's mechanical, it's hormonal, it's nutritional. Go back to the first and the second episode to remind yourself that bone strength and bone quality are more meaningful than just bone density. Okay, I myself talk about BMD, bone mineral density, but it's not just that. Don't get wound up with a T-score and a DEXA scan. Look at your overall health and your risk of fracture. There's so many other things that are putting you at risk for fracture other than just a number, right? Because one DEXA scan, one DEXA score does not equal fracture risk. In the next episode, we're going to talk about hormone therapy and bone and what the research actually shows and where hormones really fit into this puzzle. If it is for you or not for you, it's okay. Like there's so many things we can do outside of hormones I mean, meaning taking hormones if it's not an option for you or you won't take it. There's a lot of things we can do, but it's a piece. If you are considering it or if you are on it, it's good to know what is it doing for your bone. And if you need more support, consider joining us in the Biohacking Menopause membership group. You're going to meet like-minded women. You're going to meet women just like you. These girls are so amazing. I know you're listening, girls, and you know how much I love you. And I'm just so proud to be attracting incredible women who know so much and help each other with it. So please consider joining us there. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. A wonderful group. You get a lot of support. And I want to thank you for being here and spending your time with me today and being patient, getting to the end. So have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at in the world. And I will see you next time.